It is Monday, December 16th, 2024. It's approximately a week before Christmas, and that also means that it's Christmas time with the Knee Jerks, Detroit Sports Talk with Eno and Big Al. And, of course, Nick. I can't forget Nick. I'm still getting used to throwing him in there, so I'm sorry about that, Nick. My apologies. But anyway, we're here to talk Detroit sports. My name is Al Beaton, longtime Detroit-based podcaster, blogger, man about town, whatever you want to call me. Joining me, as always, are my partners in crime. First off is our left coast correspondent, the man who is out in the Pacific Northwest. How's things going, Nick?
Well, not too bad over here. So nothing to complain about, but nothing particularly newsworthy in the last few days, I guess, or since the last time we were talking.
Right. No news is good news, in other words.
Fine by me.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, joining me as always is my longtime partner who has been around, I think, for almost a quarter decade at this point. Not quarter decade, more like a quarter century, I meant to say, but actually it's been like 16 years. And that
quarter
is
decade.
Yeah, quarter decade.
2.5 years.
2.5 years. And that would be, of course, the man who has the Greg Eno Substack, which he wrote lots about the Lions today, and we'll talk a lot about the Lions, and that would be Greg Eno, and who also has a Blue Sky account now as well. Greg, what's up?
I do? Oh, I try to do.
Yes, you do.
Sometimes I forget about that one. Yeah. I am Greg.
Sounds like you really don't care, do you?
Yeah.
Thanks for reminding me. I am Greg Eno from my Substack, gregeno.substack.com. Please subscribe. I will be in your inbox every Monday, sometimes on Thursday with a bonus column. I would appreciate it if you would subscribe. Today's piece, as Al indicated, was about how everybody should kind of just chill out and relax about the Lions. I know there's a lot of injuries piling up, but what happened Sunday was not, A, totally unexpected, and B, the end of the world. We'll talk about that, of course, later on in the program. So that would be great if you would do that for me, please. I also want to remind you to follow me on Twitter at Greg Eno, the aforementioned X or aforementioned Blue Sky. I am a Blue Sky, Greg Eno at Blue Sky as well. Follow the Knee Jerks on Twitter as well. We were going to have, this is kind of my fault, guys. We were going to have Bob Page on the program tonight. I failed to remind Bob in a timely manner that we are doing this program now via laptop. He's so used to Al joining us via phone and via Skype that I just neglected to give him really enough notice to be here on camera. So that's okay. We'll reschedule Bob sometime in 2025. It's not a big deal. We got plenty to talk about tonight anyway. And I'm sure those discussions will take us for most of the 90 minutes we have together anyway. But before we do any of that stuff, we're going to play a game we like to call Whose Birthday Is It, Maestro? Everybody knows how we play this game by now. I'll give Al and Nick a clue or two or three of an individual whose birthday it is today in the world of sports. And if one of those gentlemen can correctly guess that person within the first two clues, this time they will receive a Game Boy handheld play toy with the video toy with a preloaded Tetris game inside of it. So
you sound like my parents trying to describe a video game back in the day. Yeah, that's true. You will receive that if I can properly describe it. You'll receive it. This person, guys, made his name in the world of football, American football, I will say that. He was born on this date in 1962, and he was a player, quite a renowned player for the Chicago Bears initially, although he played a little bit for the Eagles. Defensive player, and was really kind of a cult figure for the Bears. Played for the Eagles, too. And he'd be approximately our age, at least my age, if he's born in 62, you said. So it wouldn't be William Perry, would it?
It would be.
No.
Oh, absolutely.
I'd forgotten he played with the Eagles.
He did just for a couple of years.
Yeah.
The refrigerator.
Yeah.
And he went to Clemson and was a rookie on that 85 Bears team that, of course, won the Super Bowl. If you remember correctly, they would give the ball to Perry sometimes as a running back.
Yeah,
that was kind of his little.
But it was kind of unprecedented at the time.
Right, and there was some controversy about that because they gave Perry the ball in the Super Bowl let him score a touchdown and not Walter Payton. And there was some
Right.
hard feelings about that and some weirdness about that. William Perry, 62 years old today. And I will also say that William Perry had kind of a tangential involvement in how Vinnie Johnson got to be known as the microwave. And that was because Danny Ainge, who gave Vinny that nickname, said, if that guy in Chicago is the fridge, then this guy is the microwave.
Microwave. That's right. I've forgotten about that.
That's how that whole nickname started. And William Perry, he set the record for the heaviest player to score a touchdown at 335 pounds. Although I'd like to know how much Dan Skipper weighs. I don't know how much Dan Skipper will get into that later. But certainly the heaviest player to score a touchdown in the Super Bowl, and has the largest Super Bowl ring at size 23.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people talk about Bob Lanier's shoe size of 22. William Perry, a ring size of 23 is pretty freaking big.
Right.
So good job. You get the Game Boy toy.
Yeah, I'll put it on the shelf next to my Pong. Yeah, so honestly, I had a Pong back.
So did I.
I remember getting it for Christmas from my parents when that was a big deal.
Absolutely.
You could play essentially ping pong, and you could play handball, and you could play doubles. And I think
that wasn't easy, by the way. That Pong was not easy.
Yeah, especially because I remember at least when we had, the controls were literally on the console itself. So you had to sit next to each other and pour a little knob. And Nick's like, who are these old people I'm with here? So
I actually vaguely remember Pong.
Yeah. He vaguely remembers it like we lived it. Yeah.
No, I'm the Pac-Man, the Space Invader generation.
There you go. Exactly. You're the next generation. Exactly.
Frogger.
Well, what was your first console? If you don't mind me asking.
Let's see. I eventually got the Atari 2600.
But
my parents would only buy it after. No, actually, a relative bought it because my parents wouldn't, and it was already kind of, the market was saturated, so it was only $50 at the time, not the 200 that it was going for. But before that, for Christmas, I got a game console, and I don't remember the name of it. I do remember, though, it was sold at Montgomery Ward's.
Mm-hmm.
And it had like one cartridge. It had a bunch of games on it. And I remember my dad and I playing it. I must have been under 10 years old. So, or about that.
Yeah, I'm sure our Pong came from like Sears or something. That's just how your parents got stuff back then. I remember getting the catalog out and making a list of stuff or circling pictures in the catalog. So exactly. So
So in our case, Montgomery Ward's was like a few doors down from my parents' diner, so it was really easy to go into there. And get that stuff.
And now we shop from our couch. And I yell at Amazon because I get notifications that something I ordered got lost in shipping purgatory, and I have to reorder the goddamn thing. So, I guess everything's relative, as they say. But with that, now that we're done reminiscing, we need to talk sports, and who knows what we're going to touch on, especially since we're kind of winging it without Bob joining us this week. So, obviously, we have lots of Lions talk to discuss. The Tigers did make one free agent move that we'll probably touch on. The Pistons and Wings have made a lot of news lately, especially the Wings. There's nothing going on there other than the occasional win and a lot of losses. And the Pistons made a salary cap move. It's kind of convoluted, but it's going to work out in the end when you see how much cap space they have. But we'll touch on that if we get a chance. I think mostly it's going to be a pretty Lion-centric podcast because there's a lot to go over right now as to what's going on. Apparently, is it safe to say this is the worst 12-2 team in history? Because that's what it feels like right now, the way people are acting. But obviously, because the Lions are now 12-2, their 11-game winning streak came to an end on Sunday. As they fell to the Bills 48-42 in a game that probably wasn't quite as close as the score makes it look to be. Even though if the Lions had recovered an onside kick, they would have had a couple of shots at a Hail Mary. They were able to come back, but we'll get into all that. But obviously the topic du jour in this area, in Lions fandom, and I'm sure in Lions Twitter, on Lions Sports Talk Radio, on Lions online sites, every place you go, it's all about the injuries. Because yesterday in that game, guys, they along with losing the game, which is like Greg alluded to, that's not unexpected. The Bills are a legit Super Bowl contender with the leading candidate to win the MVP and Josh Allen, who at times looked like he was playing for cheat code last night. But on the Lions side of things are looking very grim with the injuries because along with the loss of the game, they lost Aleem McNeil, who was playing at an all-pro level as the interior line. He tore his ACL. You could and you tell when they showed highlights, when they showed a replay of that yesterday, as soon as he landed wrong on his foot, and you could just tell the way he was moving. Oh, I go, shit, that's a non-contact knee injury, and that's exactly what it was. Carlton Davis, who was their number one cornerback and is having a hell of a season, broke his jaw. Now, how often does that happen in the NFL, where someone breaks their jaw?
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, but there's the possibility he might be able to come back in 6 weeks, but who the hell knows at this point? But he's out long term. If he comes back, it'll be after the Lions make a deep run into the playoffs. And I think the most shocking one, well, of course, I need to mention their special teams ace, Khalil Dorsey, who is playing a lot at cornerback because of injuries. He essentially had the same injury that Aiden Hutchinson had, where he snapped his leg in half. And it looked like it was friendly fire. On a pick play, ran into his teammate, snapped his leg. He's out for the year. And then today we heard that obviously, if you're watching the game yesterday, you saw that David Montgomery, the 1B to Jahmyr Gibbs 1A at running back, or vice versa. That's how important he is to the offense. You could tell he was gimpy. He came up a few times limping. Well, it came out today that he tore his MCL and had having surgery today, so he is now out for the year. And to say he went back in the game with that knee, which tells you how tough the guy is, how tough NFL players are in general. But these are not just backups they're losing here, guys. These are core pieces to both the offense and defense, more the defense. And all of a sudden, the IR is, I know it's cliche to call it a mash unit, but that's essentially what it is right now. It's full of blood, guts, and gore at this point, with snapped legs and torn ligaments and concussions and head injuries, and who knows what else has been broken. So I guess I'll start with you, Greg, because you wrote about this today, about the Lions and what's going on right now. And I don't know if you spent any time listening to Sports Talk Radio, or reading the papers for that matter. There's a lot of doom and gloom out there right now, which is why I alluded to the Lions being the worst 12-2 team in history at the moment. But I don't know where to start. Where do we go from here? Because this team is absolutely decimated by injuries. And what looked like I won't call it a sure thing. There's no such thing as a sure thing in football in the NFL. But this team looked like they were tracking for a Super Bowl run. Now, all of a sudden, with these injuries and the way the defense has played and how Dan Campbell has had to change his play calling, which we'll get into later, because of that defense, all of a sudden, a deep playoff run is not so assured.
Well, like you said, nothing is assured in the NFL.
Right.
Number two, most of the injuries, with the exception of David Montgomery, have been on defense, and we saw the high-powered offense. Number three, I seem to remember a lot of doom and gloom when Aiden Hutchinson went down.
Yeah.
He's just one guy back in October in Dallas, and they did lose a game after that until yesterday. And they played the best team in the AFC, although that's still to be determined because Josh Allen still has not beaten Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. But as it stands right now, I would take Josh Allen over Patrick Mahomes any day of the week. Those I would counter right away with those things. Now, having said that, yes, lots of injuries have piled up. They are due to get Alex Anzalone back, I believe, before maybe for the Vikings game or certainly for the playoffs. So that's good news. Still don't know about Carlton Davis III. You mentioned the broken jaw. I don't know much about broken jaws, but it seems like you might be able to play with one in but I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know if that's feasible or not. Yeah, I understand that. I get the concern. I do. I don't happen to share the doom and gloomers because they've been able to win all these games without a lot of these key people. I know it's piling up. I know because McNeil's now. That's not good news. Lee McNeil
Right.
out. That's not good for sure. I don't know. I just feel like they've got enough to they've got the 3 games they have left are at Chicago, at San Francisco, home to Minnesota. Very winnable, all 3 of those games. The 49ers are having a rough year. The Bears are awful. And then you've got the Vikings at home, which I know their only 2 losses have been at home for the Lions, but I still feel comfortable playing that game in Detroit, especially if the division is on the line. The Lions have not lost 2 in a row in more than 2 years, believe it or not. They have not had a 2-game losing streak in more than 2 years. I think they're going to be okay. I think they'll beat the Bears this Sunday. It may not be pretty in Chicago. We don't know what the weather's going to be like. It may not be a 40-point game, but it might be one of those 23-17 deals where they just have enough to get the job done. I think they can go out to San Francisco and win that game. I think they'll be motivated by what happened last year in the NFC Championship game. I know, like I said, the 49ers are down, and they're having some issues that we probably aren't going to be talking about in this program. But if we were doing this program out of San Francisco, we would be talking about what's that kid's name that didn't want to play? That linebacker didn't want to play. It didn't. 49ers. What's that guy's name? He didn't want to play, and I'll dig it up. I'll dig it up.
Yeah,
later.
the Niners linebacker or whatever.
Yeah. So they've got their issues. It's all about. I mean, I know everybody's looking at the Eagles and they're scared to death. They're looking at the Vikings right breathing down the Lions' necks and they're scared to death. The Lions have literally their fate in their own hands. If they win their last 3 games, no one can catch them. Not even the Eagles, not the Vikings. Nobody can catch them. They have a tiebreaker over the Eagles. That loss Sunday was against an AFC team, by the way. They still only have 1 loss against the NFC, and the Eagles have 2.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what the Eagles do. Both the Lions and Eagles have all 3 of their games left against conference opponents. If the Lions win all 3 and the Eagles win all 3, it doesn't matter. Lions get the number 1 seed by virtue of the fact they have 1 NFC loss and the Eagles have 2. So that's another thing they have going for them. And you never know. I mean, the Eagles play at the Commanders. You don't know what might happen there. Nick made a good point that the Cowboys are, for whatever reason, went on the road and don't win at home. They play the Cowboys at Philadelphia. So we'll see. But I guess what I'm saying is I think the Lions have enough on offense to compensate for how banged up they are on defense. And I'm also heartened by the fact that they're going to be getting Anzalone back. That's a huge loss.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nick, where do you fall on all this? Are you I don't want to say you fall more on the gloom and doom side, or are you falling more on where Greg is, where there's still a silver lining here?
I guess I lean more towards a silver lining. I'm certainly not doom and gloom. They're a 12-2 team. They're top seed in the NFC, and they've been losing players all year long and somehow really haven't slipped that much. They knock off 10, 11 straight wins, whatever it was that they had. And they happen to lose one to a damn good football team. And whatever. Allen's playing out of his mind, to be honest. I mean, he is playing out of his mind. I'm not that worried about it. So what? They had a bad game. You could argue, we'll probably get into this, some of the particular things that decisions made on what do you call it, in the game. But it's not a big deal to me, honestly. The fact that they're still 12-2 after all those losses tells you how damn deep that team is. And when Aiden Hutchinson went down, it took a little while, but they found, they traded for another good defensive end. So the fact that Brad Holmes knows how to scout and pick guys that fit on their team and then can find somebody to replace them and do admirable jobs, that's no small thing. So I'm not as doom and gloom on it. Will they win the Super Bowl? Will I feel less confident that they'll win a Super Bowl? Probably not, but who the hell knows what they're going to do in the playoffs? I have no idea. And I'm not as worried about the Eagles either. They had a weaker schedule than the Lions. They played Dallas. They played the Giants. Who else? The Commanders are kind of meh. So their division isn't as tough, if you ask me, as the NFC North. So the Lions have done a hell of a job for being as banged up as they are. So I'm not worried about it, though.
Yeah. Well, I'll just throw it out there. Coming from the opposite end, how they keep and this is what a coach is going to say. Dan Campbell is just going to say, no one's feeling sorry for us. It's next man up. We have confidence in the players we do have in the locker room, blah, blah, blah. But guys, don't you think at some point the well runs dry of capable players? Because the Lions defense hasn't really made a needed stop in a game and a half, maybe? They couldn't stop the Bills at all yesterday. I think the only thing that stopped them was a missed field goal, end of the half, and we'll get into this. I think it's reflecting in some of the decisions Dan Campbell's making, but it's pretty obvious that they're running out of bodies on defense, and the offense has literally no room for error at this point. Zero room for error at this point. As we saw yesterday, they got off to a slow start, and next thing you know, they were down 14-0, and they were in catch-up mode the entire time. That's the thing with the way things look right now, is that you have a defense that can't stop anybody. I think this Sunday will tell us something, because the Bears are not a good team. They're average at best on a good day. And if the Lions struggle to stop them, they're going to have their hands full against specifically the Vikings in the last week of the season. But there's got to be a point where you just run out of bodies, and you kind of have to face the music that this may not be the year now.
Well, we'll see. The only time will tell. I know. I get it. Believe me. I know. I appreciate that take. I appreciate people's wringing their hands. Josh Allen was by far best quarterback the Lions have and will face this year, without not even close. I don't care. I don't want to hear about Stafford. I don't want to hear about the kid in Mayfield, the kid in Tampa. I don't want to hear about Love. It's by far Allen. He's the MVP of the league. Let's face it. And it's not the Bills stopped them. Bills gave up 42 points. And I know that some of that was garbage time, and I hate to use that term, but still, I
wouldn't call it garbage time, because they were never more than 2 scores.
Yeah, right. I wouldn't call it that either. Some people would call. I don't call it that either, because you're right. The game.
Because I laugh when people call that stat padding for Goff.
Right. No. The Lions
they were one recovered kick away from having a chance to tie the game, to win the game. Actually,
right. So they had multiple fourth down conversions. They converted a 4th and 10 toward the end of that game. The Lions did. The Bills. That's how I finished my piece today. The Bills defense didn't impress me either. By the way, they didn't stop anybody either. The Lions had a fumble, which was unfortunate. The St. Brown fumble, but the Bills really didn't do much to stop. They sacked Goff a few times. That's true. Whereas the Lions did not sack Allen. But it wasn't like the Bills were rolling out the 85 Bears out there. They were not the greatest defense either. They gave up 44 points last week to the Rams, which is not a juggernaut, and they gave up 42 points to the Lions. So they've given up 86 points the last 2 games. The Bills have. Yeah. So don't come at me with their defense isn't any good either. Okay, so I'm not sure that they'll even get out of the AFC. To be quite frank with you,
right.
They may run into a hot Ravens team, a hot Steelers team. They might fall again to KC. Who knows? But that defense is not anything to write home about. I'm sorry. They don't. When you give 86 points in 2 games, you're not impressive. I'm sorry. So they're no good. Their defense isn't any good. So they're relying on their offense with Allen. They're trying to outscore everybody. It worked against the Rams. It didn't work against the Rams. It worked against the Lions. So now they're going to go into the playoffs, try to win 36-35. You can't do that in the playoffs. It's hard to do. So I'm not a believer in the Bills. They're the best team the Lions have played in a long time this year, but doesn't mean they're going right. I'm not punching their ticket to the Super Bowl either. I don't care how healthy they are. They're healthy for the most part, although they're missing some guys in the secondary. That's for sure. They have missed some secondary guys. It's for sure. The Bills said yesterday, but I'm not very impressed with their defense whatsoever. So we'll see. You look at the rest of the AFC, the NFC though, Al and Nick. Nick mentioned Philly, or one of you guys mentioned Philly not playing a very strong schedule, and that could be true. There's not really anybody in the NFC other than Philadelphia that really gives me pause. Lions have beaten the Packers twice. I think they can handle the Vikings. And the Eagles are probably the team that would worry me the most. But the NFC is not filled with a bunch of landmines. I think the Lions, who knows, if the Eagles get upset earlier in an early round, and the Lions end up playing something like Tampa or the Rams, or God forbid the Commanders or something like that in the NFC Championship game, I like their chances, because we don't know how this is going to unfold. We don't know oftentimes there's an upset in the playoffs. A team comes out and doesn't play up to their capabilities, and they get stung even at home by a road team who's hungry. And how many times have we seen that? A road warrior team go out there and win 2 or 3 road games in the playoffs, make it all the way to the conference championship or to the Super Bowl. So, you don't know who's going to be out there, who's left standing in the NFC. So I say roll the footballs out there. Let's see what happens. If the Lions have to do with a banged up defense, so be it.
Yeah, I think what's kind of playing into this, Nick, is that fans want someone or something to blame for what's happened. I've heard or read that fans blaming Brad Holmes for signing injury-prone players. I've seen people blaming the conditioning staff and strength and conditioning staff of the Lions. I've seen the AstroTurf, or the field turf, whatever it's called now, at Ford Field is to blame. I've also heard that Bobby Lane is still to blame because the curse is still supposed to be there. So that means we still have to blame Peyton Manning and Jeff Daniels for not actually ending the curse. So, but regardless of that, Nick, I think that's the frustrating part. Is I think fans are having trouble grasping the fact that sometimes there's no one to blame. Shit happens, as you would say.
You know what? And shit, it is just shit happening. Yeah. And I think the way the Lions team isn't even pointing to those injuries for kind of losing to the Bills or saying, poor me. I've remembered other Lions coaches pointing to injuries before.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't remember which coach, but none of those teams were that good. So take your pick. And these guys aren't having any of that. They're going to do everything they can. They're still going to play balls to the wall football and do whatever they can with what they've got.
Oh, and that's another one I've seen blamed. They're saying they're playing too hard or they're practicing too hard. Yeah. Yeah.
That's loss number 2 this year?
Yeah.
That's their second fucking loss of the whole year. How are you taking that little information and extrapolating to the playoffs? None of that holds. I think I was telling you guys yesterday, as a scientist, if I draw too many conclusions over one experiment, I'm crucified as a scientist.
Yeah.
I will never be taken seriously again. Yes, they have a lot of injuries. Yes, they have roadblocks because of those injuries. So what? The job of the front office and the coaching staff is to field an entire team. So it is supposed to be next man up. And if you're not deep, you're going to be terrible. The fact that they're 12-2 with all those injuries means they're a good team. And they played another really damn good team yesterday. Yeah. The margin for error between two good teams is razor thin. So every decision you make, has a big impact. That's like looking at the finals in the 100-meter dash. There's such a razor thin margin between first and second place usually, unless you're Ben Johnson on steroids from the past, right? The littlest thing could make a big difference, and that's what happened yesterday. Yeah. The Lions started slow and were treading water the rest of the way.
Yeah,
that happened. They did not have that kind of margin for error, and it cost them the game.
Yeah, and Greg, it was kind of, Nick brought that, he said about extrapolating something out of a small sample size. When I posted that I posted the 3 straight headlines from the Detroit Free Press like less than an hour after the game, And the headlines were, Lions in trouble if they don't get healthy and fix weaknesses. Next headline, forget the score. Lions need to fix their offense and quickly. And then there was, if this was a playoff test for the Lions, they failed. And of course, that last one was Carlos, of course. But that's, I think that's kind of playing into this, is that we have and these are beat writers. The beat writers seem to have a much more measured take on all this. But when I'm seeing the columnists spew this, I know it's opinion. It's they're basically writing on vibes more than anything else. But to essentially count this team out before the playoffs have even started, after what we've seen over the past 3 years, for what this team is capable of, even when they're shorthanded, I think that is honestly kind of insulting to the team and Dan Campbell especially.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't understand. Well, you know what? You can't make everybody happy. I mean, that's
right.
The fans, and I know they're so. The way that they're looking at this, the fans is that this is a unicorn for them. They've never seen a Lions team this good at all, and they're so afraid. And I understand why they feel this way. They're so afraid of it being derailed. Yeah. And you mentioned, Al, a few minutes ago about wanting to blame somebody or someone.
Right.
And what they're having trouble stomaching, the fans, is that they don't want this potential Cinderella, it's just not a Cinderella story, potential magical season to be cut off at the knees by something that is not really a matter of winning or losing a football game. It's the injury thing. That's what makes everybody crazy about this. They would rather the Lions be healthy, of course, and lose than feel like they're losing because they're not healthy. And they're scared to death that this season that they've waited all their lives for is going to go down the tubes because of something called injuries, which we all know, of course, is ever present in the NFL. But to this degree, they're scared to death of that being the reason why the Lions don't make it all the way. And I understand that. I really do. I also think that this is a fluke. I think that I get fire the strength and conditioning coach. I saw somebody say they want to put grass at Ford Field, even though it's an indoor arena. I understand all that. That's all reactionary stuff to what I think is a fluke. They didn't. I mean, it just sometimes it works out that way. Sometimes a lot of guys go down. It stinks. I don't know, and I appreciate wanting to, like you said, there's a mentality to blame something or someone, and because everybody wants simple answers to complex problems, and a simple answer would be to just point the finger at the strength and conditioning staff and say, you're to blame, you're fired, and then by firing you, all the injuries are going to magically go away. Well, that's not going to happen. First of all, they're not going to get fired. Secondly, if they were to get fired, it's not going to make the injuries go away. This is the NFL where guys get hurt all the time. These are big men, big, fast men going at full speed, hitting each other. For example, I don't know if you remember, there was a hit on I don't know who delivered it. If it was Pascal, I can't remember who delivered it. There was a hit on Allen that was perfectly legal. He had just thrown the ball. He got drilled out of it was right by the sidelines. Yeah. And even Tony Romo said that's a clean hit. And it was. But it was it was a blow. He got blown up. Allen got absolutely blown up. It's amazing to me, as many injuries that happen in the NFL, that guys can sustain hits like that. There was a hit that St. Brown took, by the way, too. Yep. Guys can sustain hits like that and bounce up and continue to play. Now, I'm not suggesting that they don't feel them. Of course they do. And they may feel them the next morning, for sure. But that was a monstrous hit on Allen. I don't know if you guys remember what I'm talking about. A monstrous hit. And he was 4 or 5 feet in the air and slammed down on the ground. Completely clean hit. Just after he released the football. And my God, the punishment these men take on the football field, it's amazing that more guys aren't hurt really. And the David Montgomery injury, and the other thing that's funny about this too is that you can sustain those kind of hits, but then the David Montgomery injury was kind of stealth. We're not really sure how it happened. There was some video that somebody put on Twitter that some surgeon or some doctor put on, orthopedic guy put online and said, I think this is where he got hurt. He was showing it in super slow motion. Don't know for sure if that was when he did get hurt, but some of these injuries you and I can't see.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, guy's on the sideline, or he's in the tent, and we didn't even see what happened to the guy.
Yeah, exactly. And we do have Mr. Wizard with us. He could give us some simple answers. But if you're not watching the video, Nick's got the periodic table posted behind him. It's a really cool background. But
yeah, it is.
Yeah, but
and that's not a virtual background. That's
actual. Exactly. Yeah, it looks great.
I got it at IKEA of all places. So
we should. I'll have to post a link in the show notes. But yeah, that's the. Yeah, I guess Greg put it best, Nick, when he said people want simple answers for complex problems, and that goes for every walk of life. But yeah, as with these Lions, there's a multitude of things happening here that either can't be fixed or won't be fixed till after the season, or they're just going to have to patch together with duct tape and baling wire. And it just is what it is. And I think that's the hardest thing to accept, that it is what it is. You have what you have, and the season's not over, and you still have to move forward, and you just have to make do. And that might not be good enough, but as Greg put it, no one takes a day off in the NFL, any given Sunday and all that. So, I can understand fans' frustration, but also I don't get the, oh my God, the season's over, let's start planning for the draft. I guess it comes. I'm sure you see this on Twitter all the time, Nick. You spend a lot of time on Detroit sports Twitter, or mood swings with a fan base can not even run from game to game, but from fucking series to series, or snap to snap, for that matter. And right now we're in one of those wild mood swings with this fan base. It's crazy.
I do see kind of mood swings, like every play and all the implications it could have in the future, and so on and so forth. It's like I kind of stopped listening just because it's nonsense.
Yeah. Look,
the Lions lost their second game of the season. They're getting hurt, yes. And Greg is right. There's no simple solutions to a complex problem, especially injuries in such a violent game.
Yeah.
It's just by dumb luck this year, it's predominantly on the Lions defense, which they can ill afford to kind of lose more people. It's just a lot of guys are going out. But the Lions, for once in their history that I can remember, have depth, and they are solving this problem. It doesn't go away. So, the other thing is, it's one game. Why are they panicking about a 12-2 team with losing their second game at the end of the season? Obviously, they're doing something right to be 12-2 to begin with. And they are deep. And I don't think there's any reason to panic. It's like the Lions lost some guys. They're going to fill those roster spots with the best guys they can. And they're going to adjust their game plan for any given game based on that. And they plan to play balls to the wall still and try and win those games. What else can you ask of them? Firing the condition coach, getting another condition coach, like Greg says, what is that going to do? Nothing. That's not going to address anything. At least that we can tell. It's certainly not going to prevent an injury. So I think the fans are panicking because they don't know what to do with all of this. And they're feeling like their Cinderella season, I'll say it that way, is for sure, is going down the tubes. Whereas just play the games. You'll find out soon enough.
Yeah, and just to follow up with that, Nick, I have a feeling you just described Lions fans' PTSD. Lifetime's worth of disappointment, the worst option always seeming to happen to this franchise. And here we are in the best season of all of our lifetimes. And all of a sudden, as you put it, shit is happening, and none of it is good. So I actually do think it's played into our reptilian minds that we have here, the little reptilian thing in the base of our skull here that just wants to come out and say, oh, God, here we go again. Jesus Christ, we just can't have nice things before, as you say, it even plays out. We got to let it play out. Who knows what's going to happen? But yeah, it really is. I really believe in this, and I know I don't want to minimize PTSD, but in a sports context, I really do feel like the Lions fan base as a whole has to deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, you could look at it another way too. They've gotten spoiled over the last 3 years and expect the Lions never to lose a game.
Oh no, and, that too. That's a big one right there.
And then all of a sudden they lose a game and they're mortal.
Yeah.
And, so we knew it was going to happen.
Yeah.
The Lions look good. They look strong against everybody they played, but eventually they're going to lose. And who the hell, when the playoffs start, who the hell knows what's going to happen?
Right.
Greg was saying this, and he's right. The Bills have been a terrible playoff team. The Ravens, as much as the league loves Lamar Jackson, doesn't show up in the playoffs either. Who shows up? Kansas City, who had an off year last year, were playing playoff games on the road. They knew what they were doing. They didn't panic, and they won the freaking Super Bowl again. So, as much as I'm fatigued by Kansas City, they're only focused on playing the games and winning the games. That's it, no matter what they've got. So, I don't think there's any need to panic. And yeah, the last thing we want to do, and I don't think we have, a traditional SOL team either. This is not a same old Lions team. Dan Campbell's not choosing the wind. He's not doing whatever else stupid shit the Lions, other coaches and front offices have been doing. So let them play the game. See what happens.
You're bringing up my Lions PTSD by bringing up guys like that. Marty Mornhinweg and Rod Marinelli, who believed in the invisible. And Jesus Christ.
Rod Marinelli's what do you call it? Perfect season.
Yeah.
Was started off by him wanting to make sure he chooses guys that are really good in practice.
Yeah. Right.
Like so what?
Yeah. I would say after Marinelli was fired, I never wanted to hear the term pad level ever again.
Or pound the rock.
He just leaned on that stuff. But Greg, we do need to touch on, almost to go with this, because you brought this up, that's the one thing I think where people are kind of forgetting about this, is that even without Montgomery, they still have a world-class running back in Jahmyr Gibbs. They have a top 10, maybe even top 5 quarterback in Jared Goff, who played out of his mind, over 500 total yards, 5 touchdowns yesterday, no picks. A quarterback rating of like 120. He was great yesterday. And he was, yes, there was a lot of desperation throws, but he was damn good yesterday. He put toe-to-toe with Josh Allen and honestly put up a slightly better passing. He put up better passing numbers than Allen. But regardless of all of that, I think you made the point that this team does have an offense that they can essentially lean heavily on. And we're starting to see that with some of Dan Campbell's decision making. I would be at the point with the way things are looking with this team. I could see Dan Campbell seeing what I have on defense, what I have on offense, where all my stars are left are on offense. I could honestly see him never punting again the rest of the year with this defense. Okay, that's a little bit of a hyperbole, but I have a feeling we're going to start seeing that in his decision making. That he's going to do whatever it takes to keep that offense on the field.
Yeah, you probably, that's, and I understand, I understand that. But, I think that the Bears, and I know that nothing's ever a given in the NFL, but the Bears coming up on the schedule next is huge. That helps. I think that helps the Lions a lot. I believe they'll go in there, they'll win. Things will settle down a little bit. I don't think it's going to be a pretty victory. I don't think it's going to be one of those, run and gun, Showtime type wins. I think they'll just do enough might be a little sloppy, a little ugly out there. It usually is in Chicago for some reason, especially this time of the year. So, but they'll get it. I'm predicting like a 23-17 victory or something like that, where the game will never really be in doubt, but it won't be a blowout either. I think that'll make people feel a bit better. And then you've got a sprint to the finish with the 49ers and the Vikings. But yeah, I mean, you might be right about that. I think you're right that the decision making that is already, which with Campbell is already volatile as it is, might be even more so. You might see even more unconventional things. I know some folks are starting now that the shock is worn off on that onside kick. I know Nick found a piece and he shared it with us, an article with kind of breaking it down and describing why it was a good decision.
By the way,
and and they only took. I didn't love it. I thought that the Lions had some momentum there. They got within 10. There were 12 minutes to go. I know that the defense was having its issues. I also thought they were due to get a stop. I thought that the momentum of getting them within 10 might help the defense a little bit. Well, of course, we'll never know. But instead, they gave another touchdown. But it only took like 10 seconds or something off the clock. But now they're down by 17 again. So they got to come back up that hill again. But like I said, the Bills weren't stopping the Lions either. It wasn't like the Lions were having trouble moving the football. They didn't run the ball real well. They only ran for 48 yards, largely because they kind of got taken out of the run game by virtue of the fact they were playing catch-up ball game, and Montgomery was lame. So that was partly to blame for that. But I didn't love it. I still think that you give the defense a chance to try to get off the field. You're 10 points down at that point if they keep the ball for a few minutes before they get rid of it. But I guess Campbell was saying, hey, we haven't been able to stop them. Let's try to steal a possession. It almost kind of worked because the bounce they got in that was the kind of bounce you want to get, frankly, on a kick like that. But that guy for Buffalo was it Hooks or whatever his name was, made a great play. And whatever his name was, made a great play and damn near took it in. I almost wish he had taken it in for a touchdown, but it only took one play for them to score the touchdown. Didn't look good. It wasn't a good look for Campbell. I get it. It wasn't a good look for him. I think it was easy to jump down his throat on that. But like you said, Al, this situation is going to call for some really weird decision making. And Dan Campbell's already a weird decision maker, even when things are not this stressful. So we'll see what he does with this kind of weird defense he's got right now.
Yeah, and at the time I was wondering what the hell is he thinking, but then the more I thought about it, as you put it, Greg, he was trying to steal a possession. I think he did. It's pretty obvious he doesn't think the defense is going to do anything more than. They're not getting stops right now. At best, I think he was more concerned about stealing a possession and the clock, and what really comes down to, as you said, if the Bills are going to score, then the Lions are better off having to do it quick. Like it ended up being a one-play drive because it was the absolutely worst case scenario that happened was the guy made a play and then took it the other way down to the 5-yard line. But how often do you see that on an onside kick? That rarely happens. Which is another reason why that call to a lot of people looks so bad, because the absolute worst thing happened. Normally that does not happen on an onside kick. Usually, it gets recovered in that stat or goes out of bounds, but there's not much movement as to how far the ball goes. It goes 10 yards and there's a scramble. But we saw it in the previous game where they went for, instead of kicking the field goal and leaving lots of extra time on the clock for the Packers, he went for it on fourth down, got the first down, was able to run the clock out completely. And there was a lot of consternation over that call. When that call, I think, made even more sense than the onside kick call. But Nick, where do you fall on Dan Campbell? I don't want to call it unconventional because kind of unconventional. What the thing is, though, I think for the most part, I don't know where you fall on this. I think for the most part, the majority of these gambling decisions he makes are mathematically sound when it comes down to it. He's playing the odds, and very often the odds are in his favor when he makes these calls.
So everybody's kind of in an uproar about that because it's not the conventional thing to do.
Yeah.
It's not the thing that there's a lot, especially I see this in football.
Mm-hmm.
In this situation, you do this. In this situation, in this other situation, you do that.
Yeah.
Or you do the most high probability thing that would be successful for you. And Dan Campbell, a lot of times, is saying, no, we're going to do what's not usually expected to be done. And we're going to commit to it, and we're going to do it differently. We're going to go on fourth down a lot more than you're used to. And to me, that I'm in the innovation world. And then one of the things from this very prolific inventor I learned is like, pick whatever you think, look at what a logical solution is to a problem and do the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you're going to get the invention. That's where you're going to get the good idea. And that's kind of what he's doing. He's not always successful, but a lot of times he is.
Yeah.
And there's reasons why he did something, and it is risky, and it doesn't always work. But you know what? It's worked enough times for that team, to be honest. The kind of quote unquote trick plays. Well, it's thrown teams off balance, so it's not just this cute, frivolous play. It's put his opponents at a disadvantage. So why not try that? I think it's interesting to watch to see what he does and why he does it.
Yeah.
And he's just basically saying, I'm not just going to do the conventional, predictable thing or the most expected thing. I'm going to do something else and see if it changes my my fortunes. We see a lot of this playing probabilities in baseball. That's made baseball, to me, the most boring fucking game I could think of right now.
Right.
So, and that's all people do. It's just based on the stats and just do that. And it's dull. And so, whereas attempting something risky, just as a fan, it kind of makes it more interesting, to be honest.
Yeah. Would you rather have Jim Caldwell making these calls? That I'm on the opposition 39. I'm going to punt, and I'm 4th and 1. Yeah. Although
then you have the I'll take the wind guy. So
yeah, Marty Morningweg. Yep, exactly. Took the wind.
Did that one make any sense? That one is kind of like, okay, don't do the opposite in some cases.
Yeah.
So
do the opposite of Marty Morningweg. In other words, you're saying, yeah. But that's the thing with these, with Dan Campbell being unconventional with his play calling, and I think what I like about the play, when these things fail, he just says I made a mistake, or I made the wrong call, or he doesn't throw people under the bus, or he doesn't blame the referees, doesn't blame players, he blames himself. Because the one thing that did bug me, Greg, about this was not that he called the onside kick, is that he didn't call a second one. Because if you're going to do it once, you might as well double down on it and do it again and trying to get the ball back. And because I was surprised after the game when he said, "Oh, I shouldn't have done that," about the onside kick. But I'm not sure if that was him just not wanting to throw his defense under the bus, if you know what I'm saying. That I'm going to keep calling onside kicks because I don't think my defense can get a stop. He wasn't going to say that, so he's just going to say, "I shouldn't have done it," even though it probably realistically was the right thing to do because at desperate times call for desperate measures, and those were pretty desperate times when that happened. And I'm honestly, if you're going to do it once, you should do it every time after that. That's the only thing I'm upset about.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say upset. That's what I would have done.
Well, nobody. First of all, nobody's really talked about the change of the onside kick rule.
Yeah,
where
which is
now
goofy.
you can't. Now you can't take a team by surprise.
You have to
declare an onside.
Declare it. Yeah, that's the word. Declare.
Silly to me. It's like to me, it's like declaring a stolen base. I'm going to try to steal second base, guys. I mean, I don't get it.
Michael Scott declaring bankruptcy in the office. That's probably what, Jesus Christ. It's silly. It really is.
So because you don't have that element of surprise anymore,
yeah,
that's what makes the decision, I think, more difficult to swallow. The one
less defensible, I guess the best way to
if when you got a situation, if you're going to do an onside kick with 12 minutes to go under the old rules, where you could do it by surprise. Yeah. I think, though, Al, the reason why he may not have done it the second time is because he may have felt that, well, I can do it with 12 minutes to go. Because if they score and we fall behind by 17, there's still enough time to whittle that back down. But to try with 8 minutes to go down 10, what if they go up by 17 again? Now I'll take my chances on getting a stop, which we haven't gotten all day, but I'll take my chances on getting a stop, getting the ball back with down 10 points. Well, ultimately, of course, what happened was that the Bills did drive down again, got a field goal up by 13, but that was okay because they were still within 2 scores. But I think that he decided against the second one, because there wasn't as much time left on the clock, and he thought that. Because let's face it, the success rate on recovering an onside kick with these new rules is infinitesimal. I mean, just really, you have to. Although I thought the strategy at the end of the game, kicking it up the middle and having Jake Bates lead the charge, trying to get the football, was brilliant. Yeah, because everybody was looking at the right side and they thought he was going to try one of those bouncy jobs again. But he kicked it hard along the ground, straight ahead, and Bates himself went in and tried to get the football. And as you know, there's a wild scrum there. And for a moment, it looked like we were going to see something really fun at the end. Yeah. But the bottom line is, you can't. It's hard. You fall behind 14 points. A team like Buffalo. It's hard. It's hard to come back. Yeah. And the Bills basically did to the Lions what the Lions have done with other teams the rest of this year, which is
that's a hard thing to swallow.
Right. They kind of beat them at their own game, and it's you're right. That's the hardest pill to swallow, I think.
And just to follow up on that, I did see someone mention, I forgot where online, where they said, if you're good on these onside kicks, instead of having, you need to start teaching someone like Penei Sewell to do that. Because wouldn't you think, instead of having Jake Bates come at you, what if it was Penei Sewell coming at you on an onside kick? I think you might act a little bit differently when the ball is coming your way and you have maybe one of the meanest, most athletic linemen in the league coming straight at you. So, maybe that's the kind of out of the box thinking we have to start having when it comes to onside kicks.
Might be fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Why not? That sounds like fun, actually.
Yeah, but that's the thing, though. If you're going to think outside the box, start thinking way outside the box. But yeah, Greg's right that they pretty much have ruined onside kicks with this declaring it and all that kind of bullshit. It's awful, and don't get me going on how kickoffs have been completely taken out of the game. At this point, they either have to really punish a touchback, move it to the 40 rather than the 30, or they just need to get kickoffs out of the game altogether and just say you get the ball at the 30 the way things are now, because the kickoff return is for them. Because I heard one of the stats yesterday. I heard him bring Tony Romo or Nance bring up is that Jake Bates leads the league in touchbacks. The Lions just say just kick the shit out of the ball, put it out of the end zone, and we'll just deal with it from the 30-yard line. So. Yeah, the way football's going, I think we do have to start seeing some out-of-the-box thinking when it comes to that stuff. As Nick goes, it adds to the fun. I'm all for it. But I guess as you guys have mentioned, with all the gloom and doom, and I know we've both kind of brought this up, that regardless of all this, the Lions are still 12-2. They hold the number 1 seed in the NFC. They still control their own destiny. If they went out, and obviously they have the Bears and Niners on the road, both very winnable games, both teams playing out the string essentially at this point. And I know the Niners are nearly as banged up as the Lions are right now. Probably, I won't say worse, but they're missing some big pieces like Christian McCaffrey, for example. And then the big game will be the Vikings at home, and they refuse to lose. And actually, it's on right now, and they're up 3-0 on the Bears in the first quarter. Of course they are. So, and that could be a game that could be for, it could be for the division. It could be for the number 1 seed in the NFC. It could be that, have a home game. Because I think that's the other thing that's kind of disturbing to think about, guys. Greg, the Lions can finish 14-3 and be the number 5 seed, and then play a team that's like 9-8 on the road, and that is a frustrating thing to think about.
Yeah, but oddly enough, their only 2 losses this year have been at home.
Yeah,
they're undefeated on the road. So that's something to think about. Yeah, it's weird. That's just the way the seeding goes. Because the way they seed everybody, it goes to the divisional winners first, of course, as it should be, I guess. But yeah, what are you going to do? I mean, hey, you make the playoffs. I don't care where you're playing. You're going to be playing a lot of good teams, and you got to earn your keep. Those are tough games to win, and no matter where you play them, look at the Lions' 2 home victories last year in the playoffs. Were not easy by any stretch. I mean, they had their hands completely full with Stafford and company with the Rams. Baker Mayfield gave them a good game against Tampa. Both games at home. Neither of them were just not in the playoffs. It's just a different animal. And so I mean, you're gonna. I don't care. You're gonna have to get through a landmine to get to the Super Bowl, guys. This is not. They don't hand these things out. Like, oh, you're in the playoffs, great, good for you. I will see you in New Orleans. No, you're gonna have to really, really earn it. And these teams that are gonna beat each other up in these playoffs, the NFL playoffs are hard. They're hard, man. They're hard. These games are hard, and it's hard to win in the NFL. Period. And I don't care who you're playing. These games are not easy, and you ratchet that up in the playoffs. And I remember John Madden said that about the playoffs. He said the thing about the playoffs in the NFL was that all this preparation, you get all this training camp, all these preseason games, all these regular season games, you finally get to the playoffs. He said the thing that always struck me about the playoffs was the finality of it all when you got knocked out. Unless you were the last team standing with the trophy, the finality of realizing that, guess what? Tomorrow there's no practice. Tomorrow there's no meetings. Tomorrow there's no film sessions. You're gone. You're done. Yeah. The season's over. He says, and that's hard to accept when you've been with these people since July, training camp, 6 months, living it every single day, following the same routine every single week, and then just like that, it's over with. And he said that was always one that got me in the playoffs because he's lost. John Madden's won, but he's also lost a few playoff games too. And he said it was the finality of it all. The realization as the clock was ticking down that I'm no more football until next summer. And that's what's tough is it's when the final guns, it's the best of 7 series. It's one and done. And if you don't bring your A game, I don't care where you're playing, you're going to lose potentially. And that's tough. It's hard. And nobody wants to go 14-3 and lose in the playoffs, but they don't just take 14-3 teams and say, guess what? 14 wins. Yay. We'll see you in the Super Bowl. Doesn't work that way. Got to earn
it. Don't forget the 16-0 Patriots who won everything except the last game.
Yep.
So
that's right.
And lost on a fluke play essentially at the helmet.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
That's right.
So
and I'm sure
all of that can happen.
Yeah, and Patriots fans go to the grave knowing they were the better team and lost to goddamn Eli Manning. Who essentially is probably going to end up in the Hall of Fame thanks to 2 playoff runs. Other than that, he was an average quarterback, but that's another whole discussion. But and that's the thing, Nick, that I think Greg made a point that people, I think fans were starting to think it was fait accompli. They were going to the Super Bowl. all of a sudden, it's kind of being driven home that the playoffs can be a bit of a crapshoot, and people do tend to forget. We see it in every sport, especially I think football and baseball and hockey specifically, not so much in basketball, where the worst team sometimes or quite often loses, does not win a championship, gets knocked out early. It happens because the playoffs are a crapshoot. And a lot of times they are a roll of the dice. It all depends on who's healthy, who's hot, matchups. Some teams you just match up better with than others, for example. And a lot of that it's out of your hands. And once again, it's the luck. And I don't think fans want to accept that it's the football gods. The football gods are making decisions right now that are not in the Lions' favor, and there's not a goddamn thing they can do about it.
And that's true. I think even before this season started, people were saying the Lions are going to win the NFC North.
Right.
And my first reaction was a lot of things can happen during a season where that doesn't happen. A lot of things in the offseason can contribute to that not being true.
Right.
The Minnesota Vikings sucked last year. Now they're like tied with the Lions for record, or well, not tied yet, but they only have two losses.
Yeah. With Sam Bradford of all people.
Or no, not Bradford. Even worse, Darnold.
Yeah, Sam Darnold. Yeah, Mr. Out indefinitely with mono guy. Yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought of Bradford. Probably because he's another highly drafted quarterback with a similar name that has a similar history. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so, anything could happen. And in the playoffs, the same is true. Hockey, you see it all the time. It's like almost a curse to win the President's Trophy for the regular season.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
you
last
go a
year,
long way with a hot goalie.
That's right. And it was I think I remember last year the Ravens being favored to make it to the Super Bowl.
Yep.
They lost to what do you call it? The Chiefs. And I was saying this before, the Chiefs went on the road and just kind of started beating everybody.
Right.
I think they beat Buffalo and then they beat the Ravens or something. I think it was that order, but and then Buffalo was supposed to be like one of the teams, with a better chance than the Chiefs. Same with the Ravens, but none of that happened.
Right.
So that happens all the time. Who the hell knows? I don't care if the Lions play at home or away. I don't care if they're the top seed or not the top seed. The only thing being the top seed would do is give them a week of no injuries.
Yeah.
And maybe get a little bit healthier and heal a little bit. But so what? They have, the teams in the playoffs are the better teams in the league that year.
Yeah.
And they're going to play to win too. You're going to get the better defenses. You're going to get the better offenses. You're going to get the better game managers. You're going to get the better strategic coaches in that in there. It's not easy to get through all that.
Yeah. Sometimes the other team makes a play, and people have trouble accepting that sometimes, or a lot, honestly.
I mean, margin for error is really thin on every single one of those games. You can't take any of those teams lightly. You shouldn't.
Yeah.
And because they did something right to make their way in there. Although I question when the team is like 7-9 or 7-10 this year, and then they're the tops in their division, which those teams should not even be in the playoffs. Sorry. Yeah. If they can't even have like a above 500 record in the season.
Yeah.
So
and Greg, I'm seeing some parallels to the Eagles of last year. Weren't they 10-1 at one point, and then their season spiraled? Yeah. And I believe they got knocked out in the first round. Yeah. Because I think a lot of it had to do with injuries.
There was injuries. There was some infighting. It was a kind of a weird vibe there. It kind of just snowballed, and they thought, well, maybe when the playoffs start, we can right the ship.
Yeah,
didn't happen. They got blown out in the playoffs. I think they lost to Tampa. Did they lose to Tampa in the playoffs? I can't remember. They got blown out. Right. They got blown out.
Yeah, it does sound right. Yeah,
and they just never got it back together. It was weird, but this is a fun time of the year because these games are I know that it's nerve-wracking. Nobody wants to be 12-2 and be, sweating it out. But that's the way it is. I mean, what can you say?
Yeah. And just to follow up on that, Dan Campbell, after they lost the NFC Championship game, literally said in his post-game speech that you may never make it back here again. And
it's true. Yeah,
and
very
people,
true.
And people are like, "Oh, he's just saying,
look at the Bengals. Look at the Bengals.
Yeah, they were in the Super Bowl, and now look at them now. And they have a quarterback putting up MVP numbers, and they're under 500 right now.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So, and if there's a guy who knows football, pretty obvious Dan Campbell does, because he's been on some of the great teams. He's been on really bad teams. He's seen it all.
Yep.
And the fact, there's nothing is given to you in the NFL. Nothing's given to you in sports. Never, ever. It's a true meritocracy for the most part. Other than maybe when it comes to contracts, but when it comes to like the Yankees and the Dodgers, but that's a whole other thing. But regardless of all that, it's. I think this week's game against the Bears is going to tell us a hell of a lot about this team, their psyche, and what their plan is for those remaining games. Gesundheit against the Niners and Vikings. The 2 road games. Two teams they're going to be favored in every. That's the other thing. They're going to be favored in every one of these games. Even though instead of we're not, I don't think we're going to see. 7-point, 11-point spreads like we have earlier in the year, but I can see the Lions are going to be a couple point favorite, 3-point favorites in all these games, and the offense is there. I guess that's what it comes down to, Greg, is that it's on the offense now. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. The offense has to win. Games. They cannot. Essentially, they cannot have starts like they did against Buffalo. They just cannot fall behind like they did. And I hate to say there's no margin for error for the offense, but at this point, there doesn't seem to be margins for error. And I'm all for pulling out all the stops like we saw with – and that's it, like Dan Skipper getting that touchdown catch yesterday. That got completely forgotten about with all the drama, for example. They ran another hook and ladder, which worked. Got them a first down.
Yeah.
They ran a flea flicker. That worked. So I'm honestly at this point I would not be too upset if the Lions threw caution to the wind with their offense and just went for it. Put the damn you got and just put your foot on the accelerator and just never let off. And because I think that's essentially what it's going to take at this point.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Run, fuck the clock. Just put it in the end zone. Pardon my French, but I guess with that, is there anything else I may have forgotten about the Lions that we haven't covered yet, or anything else that you guys want to bring up that I hadn't thought of? Or are we ready to move on to some of our more favorite topics, like the Tigers?
All right, brace yourselves.
Yeah, because we have the Alex Cobb stuff with the Tigers, and the winter meetings just ended last week. I believe it was like Wednesday or Thursday. And the only move the Tigers made during the meetings, and there were a lot of signings like Juan Soto and so on and so forth, but the only move the Tigers made was to sign 37-year-old right-hand starting pitcher Alex Cobb with his career 3.84 ERA to a $15 million one-year contract. There are incentives that are innings based, which I guess is kind of a big deal considering he barely pitched this past year. But the deal gives him an extra $1 million if 140 innings pitched, and another $1 million on top of that if he pitches 150 innings. So $17 million total if he reaches 150 innings. The issue was this past year, guys. The numbers and peripherals were great, 2.76 ERA. But he had 16 1/3 innings in 3 starts for the regular season because most of the season got derailed with a hip surgery and a right shoulder injury. He did make 2 postseason starts for the Guardians, one against the Tigers. He allowed 5 runs, had an 8.81 ERA in 5 1/3 innings. It was this is not the pitcher the fan base wanted, guys. They were hoping for a Walker Buehler or bringing back Jack Flaherty or something. And instead they picked up a 37-year-old decent pitcher. He had an all-star season, I believe, in 2023, but he's coming off major injuries, and it's not like it's a cheap contract, $17 million, but just kind of the going rate for pitching anymore. It's gotten nuts. But I'll let you start, Nick, because I know you love talking Tigers and you love talking about Scott Harris. Alex Cobb is now a Tiger, and he's probably going to be their number 3 starter, number 2 maybe, probably 3. I can live with the signing if they got someone else. I'm just not sure if they're going to sign anyone else for the rotation. That's the issue.
I don't know if you can hear me snoring.
Yeah.
Not at Al, but at the whole Tigers thing. It's like, talk about a boring offseason. Talk about a boring front office. Like, every time the Tigers sign somebody, it's like, who is this person, or trade for them? Who the hell are they? It's just so uninteresting to me at all. Do they need pitching? Yes. You know, they had whatever, they were putting out chaos in the playoffs. I have a feeling the Tigers will come back to earth this coming season. They're not going to have this great, whatever that late season push was. That's all going to be fizzled out and forgotten. They have a lot of holes to fill. They have a lot of young guys still. And Scott Harris is dumpster diving and looking at secondhand stores. So I'm not that. It's not the end of the offseason, so something could happen. What could happen? I have no idea, honestly. But knowing Scott Harris, it couldn't be that interesting. So
I'm surprised you were so even-tempered about this. So essentially,
I'm running out of gas after this one.
Yeah.
I've had my,
Yeah. And I guess that also, I don't know where you stand on this, Greg, where it comes to the Cobb signing. I mean, I would hope they sign another starting pitcher, but it doesn't sound like they're going to, at least from everything we've heard from the front office. But I guess what's also bothering me is that right now it's starting to look like their backup plan for Spencer Torkelson at first base is that they're going to have Colt Keith and Justin Henry Malloy start working out at first base. Essentially, they're going. They're going to start taking ground balls at first base and starting to learn the position. That's your backup plan when there are some legit first basemen out there who could definitely fill well. They desperately need a right-handed hitting power hitter from the middle of the order, and not every single hole can be plugged internally. But it's starting to sound like, for the most part, on offense, that might just be the Tigers' plan.
Yeah, I really think that the Tigers are going to regress next year. I think that 86 wins was the absolute ceiling, the ceiling above the ceiling for that team last year. I'm glad that they happened. Of course, I'm glad they got playoff experience. I'm not against what happened. I'm just saying that I think that if you look at the way this lineup still is and how it was completely overmatched against the Guardians in the playoffs,
right?
Despite sending that series to 5 games, they were still. And I understand the playoff pitching is different than regular season pitching, but they made Matt Boyd look like Sandy Koufax, for example. And, they're striking out 13, 14 times a game. And, they this little engine that could mentality. I mean, it got them so far, and hats off to them, really. I mean, but that's not, come on now. That's a once in a lifetime thing. But again, it got them into the dance. They pushed it all the way to the 5th game of the ALDS, and good for them. But now that's kind of worn off, then we really kind of got to look at this through, hopefully through logical glasses now, and look at the roster. And you mentioned the right-handed stick that's needed. What they do with Torkelson will be fascinating. I don't know how that's going to play out. I don't know really how that. I think it's even money to determine whether or not he'll be a Tiger for much longer. I don't know what they're going to do there. Moving guys around all the time. You mentioned Colt Keith taking grounders at first base, and I thought he was going to be the second baseman of the future. And I feel like all the parts have to be are just being kind of moved around. Now Cobb, though, the problem with a guy like Cobb is that he's either going to be serviceable, and you're going to look at that contract and go, "Oh, what a great looking deal that was," or he's going to be another Kenta Maeda. He's going to go in the tank. And he's going to have an ERA of 7 at the All-Star break, and everybody's going to want to run him out of town, and everybody's going to, hate on him and hate on Harris for signing him and everything, because those guys, you don't know what's going to happen when they get to that age. Who knows? I guess it's not much of a risk. You look at it that way, but I think that what this has done, this playoff thing now, and I knew this was going to happen. It's making the fans, I think that this team is closer to contending than it really is. Not saying that they can't still be a player in the Central, because I think they can, but they still, to me, don't have a lineup or a team, a roster, 25-man roster that is really in the upper echelon of the league. Now, the thing also that gives me pause is they relied so much on that 31-11 finish on this pitching cast and their bullpen thing. And as you know, we've talked about this a million times. To rely on bullpens to rely on a bullpen to transfer what they did in year A to year B seamlessly, as if it's just a given that they'll perform that same way again 2 years in a row, is fool's gold. It rarely ever works that way. Bullpens are so volatile, and they can be volatile within a season. They're kind of like, they're kind of like power plays and penalty killing in hockey, where they look really good for a while, then look really bad for a while, and then come up there. They're up and down, up and down. That's just the way, the nature of the beast. It's kind of the same thing with bullpens. You can get on a good run. Everybody gets hot. It doesn't matter who you give the ball to. He goes out there and mows the batters down, and all of a sudden you got this great bullpen, and all that. We're going to hang our hat on the bullpen, and we get to the sixth inning, game's over. You can do that for a little while, and you can even do it for a whole season, like the Royals did when they won the World Series. But it's just not something you just rely on. It's like relying on, and we're going to get turnovers in football. By the way, there's another thing I was going to mention to you. The Lions haven't been getting turnovers on defense either. If you notice that, that well is run dry. So, I just don't look at this team without any major injection of talent from outside the organization and feel really, really good about it. I still think there's too many holes in the lineup. The Torkelson thing is weird. It's just weird to me. I almost kind of wish they would just trade the kid and cut their losses. Maybe he needs a change of scenery. Get him out of Detroit. I know Tigers fans hate to think like that because they're afraid that if he does go to another organization, he's going to become, Mark McGuire. I understand that, but I don't know how much longer they can go with this Torkelson thing. It's just a weird situation. I know he's going to go to spring training. Does he have to earn a job? Do you pencil him in on the 25-man? Is he not in? Is he got to have a good spring training? What's going to happen with this guy? And then there's the Baez situation. What's going to happen there. So I'm not feeling great about it. I think the Guardians are still by far the team to beat in the Central. I don't know. I think Kansas City could take a step back. I'm not sold on them. The Twins
look what happened to the Twins last year. They made the playoffs, and then
I have told you, I don't know how many times on this program, that the hardest team to handicap in any of the four major sports in any given year are the Minnesota Twins. They are so they are so schizophrenic. It's one year they're really good, the next year they're really bad, then they're really good, then they're really bad. They're the weirdest. I swear to God, they're the weirdest team in the last 10, 15 years. You look at their records, it's unbelievable how they lose 95 games one year, win 90 the next, win 75 the next, win 86. They're so I don't know how you predict the Twins. I honestly don't. They slipped on a banana peel last year, and that was the reason why the Tigers made the playoffs, of course. Tigers owed them that, by the way, after the Twins stole the 87 pennant, and after they stole the 2009 division, and they stole the 2006 division. So the Tigers owed the Twins a little bit of payback there on stealing a playoff spot at the end of the year.
Yeah, and just kind of follow up on that, guys. Does anybody else have the feeling with the Tigers that, and I think portion of the fan base too, that they're absolutely terrified of a long-term contract? Every time I see Alex Bregman, he would automatically fill two desperate needs for this team: an everyday third baseman and a right-handed bat with power. He's 30 years old though, and he's probably going to want 6 years at least. And everybody, even though he's a perfect fit for the team, has a history of AJ Hinch, for Christ's sake, and supposedly there is some joint interest there. Every time I see his name come up, I see people say, no, we cannot give out a long-term contract to someone 30 years old. Just no. It feels like Javi Baez broke people's brains. Not every contract, long-term deal, Nick, ends up like Javi Baez.
So which latest Tigers contract hasn't ended up like Baez? Well, there's Jordan Zimmerman. Oh, wait.
Yeah.
There's Miguel Cabrera.
That one's a whole other discussion, though. There's a lot of mitigating circumstances with that one. I'll admit to that. But yeah, Zimmerman didn't work and Baez didn't work. But just because two contracts don't work doesn't. Hey,
David had one.
Maglio Ordonez worked, and Pudge Rodriguez worked. It goes both ways, even though those were much further back. You just can't.
That was
Dave Dombrowski, right? Yeah, right.
So,
but it feels like they're
Prince
scared.
Fielder
It really
didn't work.
does. No, but they're able to flip it to Ian Kinsler, who did work.
Yeah, but now we got Scott Harris. He can't.
Yeah,
he can't flip a pancake. I mean,
yeah,
or flip a coin. So,
but doesn't it feel to you though that people are scared? They are terrified that a contract is going to somehow handicap a team that has a payroll on the lower fourth of the league to begin with. That's the thing that gets me though. I think the payroll of this team is under $100 million, probably around $80 million at this point. They can afford to take some chances. And if they blow up, so be it. But you're not
honestly.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
In baseball, of all things, I don't really give a damn how much the team shells out for a player, to be honest.
Yeah, there's no cap.
Like all of a sudden, fans being budget conscious with players and at the same time screaming to sign free agents.
Yeah, spend money, but not like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand why if the guy is a little bit older, especially if he's 30 or, older, where people are apprehensive about committing long-term to him.
Yeah.
And, once they hit a certain age, their game falls off.
Yeah.
And it's just, that's the reality of it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, and we see what happens when a young player hits free agency.
Mm-hmm.
Look, Juan Soto, $700 million because he's only 26.
That's getting. Yeah, but it was the Mets, and that owner's an idiot. He also shelled out $40 million a year for Scherzer and Verlander, only to trade off both of those guys that same year.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but how much didn't the Phillies go did something similar with what's his name, the first baseman, Bryce? Was it? What I'm talking
not Rollins, right?
No.
Harper?
Harper.
Oh, Harper.
Bryce Harper. Yeah, because he hit free agency around 26 years old, and he got a monster contract. He led him to and the Phillies are perennial contenders now. I just find it frustrating that sometimes I feel like some fans think it's their duty to protect the owner's pocketbook. And I find it ridiculous to think that, and it just gives me the feeling, Greg, that we have a franchise that is absolutely terrified of making a mistake. And the thing is, though, it depends on the player. I think a lot of people saw Javi Baez was going to decline. When his decline hit, it was not going to be a hill. It was going to be a cliff. And that's exactly what happened, because he was so dependent on his athletic ability and bat speed. When that started to go, his entire game went. But a lot of players will age far more gracefully. And if you get 4 WAR out of, say, Bregman from like age 30 to 33 or 34, and then he falls off a cliff somewhat, it's still worth it, at least in my mind.
Well, okay. The way you have to look at this, too, is that I agree with you that the mentality of playing not to lose, if you will, is not always the best route to take. Now, having said that, there are also a lot of bad contracts, not just Baez, but there are a lot of contracts that don't ever, take shape. But the other thing, too, is that it's about building a team. It's not about, okay, let's just sign Bregman and then all our worries will go away. I mean, you put a guy in a lineup and surround him with it's about team roster building. It's not about, and sometimes roster building, to Nick's point about Harris, sometimes roster building is signing a big free agent. I mean, sometimes that is the move. It's not, doesn't mean we're saying you got to build a team strictly on free agency, because that's not going to work. We know that.
Right.
We know that. But sometimes when you look at, okay, we're going to do roster construction. We're going to build this thing. We would like to build predominantly with homegrown players. Everybody wants to do that. But we're also going to look outside the organization vis-a-vis the trade market, vis-a-vis signing, whether it's the bargain basement guys like Cobb or the big ticket guys like Bregman. To me, I look at it as all part of roster building. It's not one mentality over the other. It's not like, okay, you can either build within or sign free agents. No. To me, building a roster, and you look at back, and you know this, look back at all the successful teams in Detroit. Let's just concentrate on Detroit. All the successful teams that have won championships in Detroit have done it with a mixture of homegrown people, guys acquired from trades, and a little bit of free agency sprinkled in. That's the way it's always worked. It's never been one mentality versus another. So I look at this as there's a roster to build, okay? Maybe sometimes Scott Harris and Chris Ilitch, sometimes the right move is to go out and get a guy like Bregman. Sometimes the best move is not, and try to get a guy from outside the organization via trade. Sometimes it's building from within, i.e. Colt Keith and guys like that. That's what I'm wrestling with, is people seem to think that there's two mentalities. You either build cheaply or you build expensively. No. You do a little bit of everything. That's how you build a roster. You don't just, so I don't want the Tigers to throw the baby out with the bathwater here and say, well, because we had a bad experience with Baez, hey, we don't want that to happen again. No, shame on me if we do that again. Well, and you mentioned it too. Sometimes guys do age more gracefully. If the Tigers had done their vetting on Javi Baez, and all they had to do was go to Twitter, by the way, and ask the fans, they would have told them, don't do it, don't sign him. Well, I don't see that in Bregman. I don't see that weirdness with Bregman. I don't. Now, it doesn't mean he's gonna will he decline? Well, sure. But I don't see that falling off the cliff thing with him.
The red flags aren't there. That's the thing.
He's not a middle infielder, number one.
Right.
And I just don't, he doesn't have that. I just don't see that with him. Now, they're not going to sign him. I guarantee you that they're not going to. They say, well, we're nosing around, we're kicking the tires. They're not going to sign him. They're not going to sign him.
Yeah.
Greg, you mentioned that whole thing of being gun shy because of the bad Baez contract. The other flip side is being afraid to trade away your stupid minor leaguer because they think you're trading away the next John Smoltz.
There
Right.
you go.
Right.
That's
That's
the flip. That's a great point.
Oh my
That's
God!
yes.
Like
Yeah,
if I
that's
have
right.
to hear that again, it's like
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
those are the fans that never would have made that trade for Miguel Cabrera. Because no, you can't. They have 2 top 10 prospects in all of baseball. You can't trade them.
Cameron Maven's the next coming of Willie Mays. You can't do that.
Let me add in one more thing into all of this.
Yeah.
And we've said this before, but we haven't said it tonight. And we could talk about all of these traits. We could talk about the player development. It's like, where the hell is this team going? What is their reason for existing? We've always talked about like, okay, which teams in Detroit have won something? It's the ones that were on a mission to win a championship. And the only thing I ever hear about the Tigers is like all of this minutia, all about this player development. Leave the player development for the fucking minors, for Toledo. I don't want to hear about player development at the major league level. These players are brought in to goddamn win something. That's what Harris should be focusing in on, is you're there to put together a winner, not putter around in the dumpster or secondhand store of the waiver wire or any of this other crap.
Right.
So, and Greg is right, whether you do it through a free agent signing or not, who cares?
Yeah.
I don't mind spending Chris Ilitch's money because it doesn't really matter to me.
Yeah.
So put out a winning team for once, for Christ's sake. So that's why I'm so bored of the Tigers. It's just they're not doing anything. They're not. They don't have a
Nick
goal
is
in
the
mind.
meme of the guy up the stick poking it, do something.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's the other thing. Yeah, make a trade. There's you guys both make great points. There's other ways of building a team, and the best way to do it is a mix of all of them. I don't want the Tigers to be the goddamn Rays. That is not replicable. I don't want to see them trading Riley Green when he's 25 because they don't want to pay his next contract.
Right.
So my poor father, who was a diehard Rays fan, just he hates that. He loves the Rays, but he knows every time a player he falls in love with is not going to stay. They're gone. That's just how it works there. But it's frustrating to see how the Tigers are acting as post. Things might change, but I'm with you guys. The odds are they're just going to be pecking around the margins, looking for bargains, and it's all low floor, high floor, low ceiling kind of moves. They aren't swinging for the fences, and this offense needs literally and figuratively a guy who can swing for the fences, maybe 2. But the way they're pushing this, I don't see it happening right now. All right, I guess I really don't want to talk about the Red Wings because honestly, nothing's changed. Steve Yzerman is still MIA. Derek Lalonde is still behind the bench. Hey, they beat the Leafs on Saturday night, so yay, that's always fun, but whatever. But, they're still got the 6th worst record in hockey right now, and they're still essentially nothing has changed at the Wings since the last time we bitched about them on the last show. So let's touch on the Pistons a tad before we wrap things up. And what's interesting about the Pistons isn't their record or that they fell short of making it to the NBA Cup in Vegas and all that. They're 10-16, or I literally only a half game out of the play-in right now, whatever. But what made all the news over the last couple of days was literally they did math, essentially. And I'm sure everybody's familiar with B-Ball Paul, Paul Reed, the 3rd string center, and you need 3 centers. Oh, shit.
That was going handheld on the microphone.
Yeah, my handheld mic. It came out. All right. Anyway, okay. The Pistons did math, and it involved B-Ball Paul, a.k.a. number 3 center Paul Reed. Reed was on a non-guaranteed $7.7 million deal, which would become guaranteed on January 10th. Well, weirdly, because the Pistons need an extra center, which is, for example, I just got a notification on my phone that, speaking of injuries, Beef Stew hyperextended his knee tonight. He's out. For who knows how long he's going to be out. So B-Ball Paul is going to play. But regardless of all that, they waived him. And the fan base was like, what the hell are they waiving a center for? They need a center It's like it's not like it was when Troy Weaver was there, where they had all the centers. They don't have enough at the moment, especially after cutting Reed. So that put them under the salary cap floor by like $1.4 million. So what they did was they promoted G League guard Javonte McCoy. He was inked to a non-guaranteed minimum deal that got the Pistons to the salary floor. He stayed on the roster for 1 day. I think I read somewhere it's like $40,000. That's what that deal was for 1 day. He was his salary would prorated as $40,000 for that day. But today they cut McCoy, re-signed Paul Reed to another contract for the league minimum at $3.3 million. And all of a sudden, the Pistons, just like that, created another $4 million in cap room. That now they went from $10 million under the cap to, I think, $14.5 million under the cap just by this one move. And then when you factor in the fact that they have a giant expiring contract in Tim Hardaway Jr., who has a $15 million deal, the Pistons are going to be the only team in the NBA who have any kind of significant cap room at the trade deadline. They could have up to $30 million if they throw Hardaway in on a deal. And right now, at 14.5 or so, I think the next closest team might be $2 million under the cap, if that. So that, I don't know about you guys, but I have to appreciate a little salary cap wizardry here by the Pistons. That was actually, because people are wondering, what the hell are they doing? And then a couple of days later, it's like, oh, that's what they were doing. And I gotta give credit when credit is due. They essentially created an extra $4 million in cap space, out of nothing.
Well, there's some competence now.
That's bingo.
I wrote this last summer when they brought in Trajan Langdon. I said, and now there's and JB. I said now there's some adults in the room now. Yeah. Now I feel like the Pistons, they're still going to stink for a couple of years, but I feel like now there's some people who are pulling the levers now, who know what they're doing, have a plan, and can do these kinds of little things like you were just described, which are very administrative, but still can end up being paying off. We were talking before we came on the air about how difficult it is to make, how confusing it can be sometimes to make trades in the NBA with all the different money, making all the money work, and you get multiple teams involved, and it's really, I don't know how they keep it together, but yeah, I mean, this is the kind of it may not make a lot of news, and it's not the great, it's not going to, sell tickets, but these are the kinds of things though that competent basketball people who know the rules and know what they're doing do. Yeah. And so if those kinds of things can happen in this kind of minutia, then it gives you hope that when there are bigger moves to be made, that there are the competency continues. Yeah.
It kind of reminds me, at least somewhat, a move like this reminded me when the Pistons years ago traded for when they traded for Rasheed Wallace, and in that deal they had to throw Lindsey Hunter in.
Right.
And then when they sent Hunter to Atlanta as part of the trade. Atlanta then waived him, and the Pistons immediately re-signed Lindsey Hunter.
Right.
So essentially, Rasheed Wallace, I think, ended up only costing them a draft pick and not even a player.
Right.
So, I think you nailed that. These are the kind of things that competent franchises do.
Right.
And as much as I would like to see the Pistons be better, this is this is the first year of a new regime, and you have to give them at least a little leeway because I saw idiots online saying, "Oh, who are they going to trade for?" Because they had 2 empty roster spots and then they cleared this cap space. So all of a sudden you had people say, "Oh, they're going to trade for Zach LaVine or Brandon Ingram." That would have been the stupidest thing this franchise could have done. Was wasting that cap space. I mean, I hate talking about it like this because you want the team to get better, but this team is not going to get better by signing someone or trading for someone like that. This team is going to get better by acquiring draft capital that Troy Weaver, for whatever reason, was unable to do, and get that draft capital and hopefully find that running mate for Cade Cunningham in the next draft or two. Because, and plus there's the fact that they're handcuffed because they still owe a first-round draft pick. I think Minnesota owns it right now for the trade that allowed them to draft Beef Stew, 4 or 5 years ago. And then that pick is still not conveyed, and that means the Pistons can't trade any first-round draft picks in any kind of a deal because they have to hold on to that pick. So, yeah, it's no, I don't know about you, Nick. I hate talking about front offices and procedural moves and trying to clear cap space and the possibility of sin eating, which is what they're going to obviously do. But this is where the Pistons are right now.
I think you said it best. I hate talking about the front office moves and overthinking those. I see like a lot of fans, overcooking this thing.
Yes.
And,
yes.
Okay, we have this cap space. Let's get this guy. Let's get that guy.
Yeah.
Oh, we have $20 million in cap space. Oh, this guy's salary is $20 million.
Yep.
Let's get him. Okay.
Yeah.
My question goes back to the same thing I had with the Tigers. Where's this going with the Pistons?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is it just what do you call it? Salary cap gymnastics?
Mm-hmm.
Troy Weaver was taking on bad contracts. He was like open for business taking bad contracts.
Mm-hmm.
And he was really successful at them, but it returned nothing to the Pistons. I don't know what whether Langdon's plan is any better than Troy Weaver's. I'm just going to watch and see it play out.
Yeah.
He's either going to have the same result as Weaver in the end, or let's just say they're still going to stink and they're not going to be in the playoffs or even win a playoff game for that matter, or hell, a winning season. I honestly don't know. And I'm just going to wait and see what happens. I don't want to read into like a reaction to like every little thing he does. He was just salary cap gymnastics just now. Yeah. Fine. Kudos to him on that. What's next?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, geez, but you nailed it. The fans were just going over the top. Who could they trade for? Who are they going to get? Vucevic.
God, I've been seeing that like all the last couple of days. Well, what now?
Yeah.
It's like how the fuck should I know what now? Like nobody else does. And I'm hearing Zach LaVine and Ingram like every single time Pistons transaction is being mentioned. It's like,
and getting guys like that would be like getting Charlie Villanueva and Ben Gordon back in the day. We all know how badly that worked out. So it's a shame that we're at this point that essentially they're rebuilding the rebuild, and and who knows? Best case scenario, they end up like OKC where they had so many draft picks and they were able to rebuild fairly quickly. Or for that matter, remember the process has failed. They ended up all those draft picks that Philly were able to stockpile, and they literally ended up with one player out of it. He's an MVP in Embiid, but out of all those draft picks they had, they really only ended up with one player, that homegrown player, out of all that bullshit with the process. So. God.
And a broken clock is right twice a day. So
exactly. All right, I think with that, guys, I think it's time to wrap up this podcast. So you know what that means? It means it's time for our jerk of the week. Nick, you get the lead off. Who's your jerk of the week?
Okay, I'm not sure who exactly to point the finger to. One of them I do know, and that's Derek Lalone. And I don't know if Eiserman was thinking this too. This is something that kind of fell under the radar, but last week, goaltending prospect Sebastian Cossa played his first game. I think it was against Buffalo. And they decided not to have him start the game, but have him start in the second period. And which was really a bizarre thing to do. I'd never heard of this before. So it's really bizarre to me. You figure a rookie goalie is going to have his first game at some point. You have him start the game.
Right.
For some reason, they wanted to ease him into the game by giving him a 3-goal by having his goalie mate give up 3 goals in the first period, I guess, and start from behind. So it seemed like a really strange thing to do, to kind of like throw someone into the second period because they wanted him to adjust slowly or something like that. It just seemed bizarre. And which kind of seems like the crazy shit a team that doesn't know where it's going does.
Yeah.
Versus, okay, he's going to have his first game. We're going to support him. We're going to put him in, but damn it, it's your first game. You're right. Here you go. So my jerk of the week is Derek Lalone for that strange way of handling Sebastian Cosa's first game.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Yeah. Greg, jerk of the week. Your turn.
Yeah, I'm torn between 2 NFL players. One of them is this Devondre Campbell, the linebacker that we mentioned earlier in the program, this linebacker from San Francisco who essentially has quit on the team, just literally just quit and walked out and wasn't going to play anymore. But I'm not going to go there because I don't know the whole story. I mean, that's not a good look, of course, but I don't know the whole story behind that. But I think what is worse than that is I'm going to go with Mac Hollins, who's the wide receiver for the Bills. And this was not – I didn't see this initially, but apparently people who were at the game yesterday at Ford Field, and then somebody else said it on Reddit, when Khalil Dorsey went down with his injury, which was, I guess, really bad. Hollins, who's had been talking some crap all game, did a gesture to Dorsey, who was on the ground, and was reportedly laughing at him. Now, I can't verify the laughing part, but definitely people who were at the game said that they saw Hollins pointing at Dorsey in a kind of almost a taunting way. And I just think that for the NFL being a brotherhood and everything, and not wishing injury on anybody, I just thought that was really a Bush League thing to do. I can't confirm the smiling or laughing thing, but he was making some motions to Dorsey, who was on the ground, kind of in a trash talking, taunting way, and this guy wasn't getting up, obviously Dorsey, and it was just really. That kind of stuff makes me. I just don't like that kind of stuff on the football field. I just feel like there's everybody. Ultimately, the bottom line is all those guys are in it together. I look at them as a brotherhood, even though they're playing on different teams, because the game's so violent, and because more than any other sport, the next play could be your last, literally.
Yeah.
To make that kind of a gesture at a guy on the field who's prone. I can't abide that. I just can't. And it didn't get a lot of play, but I saw it on Reddit. People going back and forth, and I can't abide that. So my jerk of the week is Mac Hollins.
Yeah, that's the thing. The NFL is a brotherhood. I think that's the best way to put it. And that should not have happened. I'm definitely with you there. All right, my jerk of the week. I'm going to go with. I guess I'm going back to the NCAA and the transfer portal, because obviously big doings this weekend, which we haven't really touched on, is the college football playoff starts Friday, and there's 1 game Friday, 3 games on Saturday. One of the teams that's playing is Penn State. Well, Penn State's backup quarterback, Bo Pribula, who actually they have a specialized package for this kid. He actually gets playing time. Well, he announced he is entering the transfer portal because starter Drew Aller is going to return. So he wants playing time because Penn State's going to bring back their starting quarterback. And people are like, how could you leave your team before the playoff even starts and you even get playing time and, all that kind of, everything that goes along with aren't you there to help win your teammates? The problem is that the transfer season is right now, and the issue is if he doesn't enter the portal right now, he's going to be stuck because he needs to enroll at whatever school he goes to in January. he needs to make it. He needs to find a new school, find the team he wants to play for, coaches that he likes, and then enroll in that school in January. And the playoffs are still going to be going on. I mean, we saw the kind of this happened to Michigan in that they couldn't get a quarterback out of the portal because the portal had closed by the time the playoffs had ended for them.
Right.
And people were trying to make judgments on this kid. Oh, how could he betray his team when the issue is he was put in this decision because the NCAA made an absolutely idiotic decision to put the portal right now. Why couldn't they have? The time to do it would have to be in the spring. So after the winter semester ends, then you can figure it all out, and then you can enroll in your new school, blah, blah, blah. But, and this, I guess it's also happened to Ohio State. 2 Ohio State quarterbacks have entered the portal. Backup quarterbacks have entered the portal. Essentially because if they want to move on, and they have every right to do so, they have to make the decision right now because the NCAA has decreed this is the only time you can transfer.
Right.
Without penalty and all that kind of bullshit. So my jerk of the week is the NCAA for putting the transfer portal at a ridiculous time, and also for any fans giving these kids grief because they're stuck between a rock and a hard place when it comes to a life-changing decision. So that's my jerk of the week, guys.
That's interesting. I didn't know that about the portal. I'm betting that they put it there on purpose just so it dissuades
to make it more difficult. Exactly.
Kids from doing it, and they just said, "Well, screw it, I'm going to do it."
Yeah, exactly.
So
I mean, it's a big deal for these kids, and I don't blame them one bit. And we could do a whole goddamn show on the NCAA and football right now because, Greg, I don't know if you heard about changes in the MAC today.
No.
NIU left.
Oh, really?
They're going to the Mountain West.
Huh. No, I didn't hear that.
An Illinois team is going to be in the Mountain West. and the thing is, the MAC, which has every right to do so, said, well, if the football team's leaving, the rest of your teams cannot stay in the MAC. So they had to move every other sports team. And from what I've read, it looks like they're going to the Horizon League, which is a big downgrade.
Right.
It might be an upgrade for football, but I think the MAC is a lot better conference when it comes to things like basketball, because all of a sudden, instead of playing Bowling Green and Toledo and the Michigan direction schools, blah blah blah, they're now playing Detroit Mercy and Oakland. I mean, say what you will about those programs, but that's definitely a step down. So
right.
Again, football when it comes to the NCAA, football actually controls everything. And that includes all the other sports have to bend their will as to what the football team does. So, but apparently they're bringing in UMass. So now we have a UMass, a team from the Northeast coming into a almost completely Great Lakes conference. But so be it. All right, with that, let's get the hell out of here. So, Greg, if you could do what you do when it comes out to the social media and the thank yous, anything we may have coming up.
Well, we are scheduled to be with you on December 30th. I presume that's still the case.
I believe so. I don't think any of us have anything going on. Nick
so,
might have more meetings, but other than that.
Yeah. So we'll see about when we bring Bob Page back. Maybe we'll bring him back as soon as the 30th. We'll take a peek at that. Again, subscribe to my Substack, gregeno.substack.com. I come into your inbox every Monday if you do that, sometimes on Thursdays. That'd be great. Follow me on Twitter at Greg Eno. Look for me on Blue Sky. I am Greg Eno there. And I want to, of course, thank my lovely wife Sharon for putting up for this nonsense every 2 weeks. And thank you, gentlemen, for making Monday so gosh darn fun.
All right. And Mr. Wizard, you could give us your anything you'd like to let everybody know we're on social media.
Yeah. And, shown on the screen is my Twitter handle at Nick Milanovich, and that's where I'm usually actually still active. I have a Blue Sky account, and I'm not sure what to do with it yet. 2 platforms is a little too much for me. So most of the time you'll find me on Twitter.
Yeah. And as always, if you want to, we appreciate if you would like, share, and or subscribe. Please do all 3. when it comes to the show, the Knee Jerks podcast, and we're easy to find online. When it comes to, if you want to listen to the show, we're available pretty much anywhere podcasts are found. We're on all the podcast platforms, and the most popular ones, such as Apple Podcasts, we're on YouTube Music, iHeartRadio, we're on Spotify, Amazon Music, Deezer, Radio Public, Ghana. TheKneeJerks.net is our homepage. All the links to the things we discuss, specific, especially when it comes to our social media handles. Greg's Substack link will be there. Obviously, the social media, anything we discuss is going to be on our homepage, TheKneeJerks.net. So, and all the show notes will be there as well if you're curious as to what we have talked about. And of course, you can also download the MP3 directly from that homepage and do what you will with that MP3. And I guess other than that, I want to say happy Festivus, guys. It's the Festivus for the rest of us. It's that time of year. Yes. Yeah. Break out your aluminum poles. But where are we going to do our airing of grievances? Or for that, where are we going to wrestle? Oh, God.
I thought we were airing grievances all the last 2 hours.
Yes, we have. That'll be the next podcast, the airing of grievances. But yes, and I also give a shout out to you guys for taking time out of your busy schedules to bullshit with me for 2 hours every couple of weeks. And also a shout out to friends, family, listeners who have tolerated us every year, going on for 16 years now of doing this fun little show. All right, but I think with that, it's time to get the hell out of here. So I guess the next time we'll see you will be New Year's Eve. So until that time, this is Al Beaton saying good evening, good luck, and aloha, along with Nick Milanovich.
Good night, everybody.
And Greg Eno of the Greg Eno Substack.
Ciao, Italy. We'll see you in 2 weeks.